Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warns the West against sending longer-range weapons to Ukraine. He has called it point-blank an escalation in the conflict that is nearing its first anniversary.
Эта эскалация, вы абсолютно правы, она вот как снежный ком. Начиналось это все с каких-то касок для военнослужащих Украины. Затем появилось стрелковое оружие. Сейчас уже говорят вовсю о самолетах.
Mr. Lavrov also lashing out at European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who is in Kyiv for her fourth visit. She and other high-ranking EU officials are holding talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Kyiv has been seeking membership, of course, of the EU. The EU chief says efforts towards Ukraine's integration will be made.
While Ukraine advances on the European path, we are tearing down barriers between our economies and societies even further. Today, we are proposing to Ukraine to join key European programs. This will give Ukraine benefits close to those of EU membership in many areas. And we will discuss this now in our working session with the ministers and the commissioners.
And for more, Rosie Burchard joins us live from Brussels. Rosie, we just heard Ursula von der Leyen there saying tearing down barriers. Has there been significant progress over Kyiv's integration into the European Union?
Quite a landmark event. This is the first time we've seen the European Commission hold a summit like this in an active war zone, in a country at war. And about 15 of Brussels' top brass European commissioners are in Kyiv for this government-to-government meeting, which is happening today. And then tomorrow, Friday, there will be a summit with the European Commission President, the European Council President, and of course, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Now, as we heard from Commission President von der Leyen, these EU officials are coming with a message of solidarity, a message of support, and also pledges to integrate Ukraine into certain European programs, to bring Ukraine closer to the European Union. But of course, what Ukraine wants above all else is some clarity on exactly when and how it will be able to fully enter the folds of this European Union. Last year, Ukraine was granted candidate status. That means it is officially on a path towards joining the EU, but the path can be a very long and arduous one. It involves lots of reforms. For example, Brussels has in the past said Kyiv still has homework to do, for example, on curbs on corruption and to improve rule of law standards. There are some here in Brussels that are advocating for a much swifter process. They would like to see the opening of what's called accession talks, which would be a big stage toward joining the EU, happen even quicker. Take a listen to some of the debate which has been happening here in Brussels at the European Parliament.
Ukraine must be invited to EU membership negotiations not someday, but this year. Our goal is to grant EU membership to Ukraine before the end of this decade. Bold and swift EU's decisions on Ukraine's future in EU will help the country to ultimately defeat.
Rosie, of course,
Ukraine clearly has its ardent supporters for its path toward joining the EU, but of course it also has some concerns. There are some here in Brussels that are expressing concerns about false promises because, of course, this is a long process with a lot of different administrative steps along the way, and it can also be a very politically challenging one.
Rosie, until we see that integration, Ukraine pushing for the West to do more against Russia. Of course, we're headed into that one-year mark now, later in February. And we've seen individual EU members adding weapons, including the much-vaunted Leopard 2 tanks. What are we likely to see in the weeks leading up to February the 24th in terms of more support from the European Union?
Well, we know Kyiv will get one wish granted, and that is that the European Union will be putting together a fresh package of sanctions against Moscow. Those sanctions which are aimed at tightening the screws on the Kremlin's ability to keep financing that war. And the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said in the last few minutes, really, in Kyiv, that she would like to see those sanctions ready to go on the 24th of February, which, of course, will mark the one-year anniversary of the full-scale invasion. Beyond that, we're expecting a couple of new announcements from this EU-Ukraine summit. The EU is expected to announce it will plan to train 15,000 more Ukrainian soldiers through its military training mission, and there will also be about 25 million euros or slightly more in US dollars in funding for training on demining, so getting rid of landmines in Ukraine. And of course, Ukraine is pushing for more weapons. We've heard Kyiv calling now for fighter jets after that taboo around main battle tanks fell. But so far, the answer from European capitals and from the US has been a no on the fighter jets. But as you can imagine, when it comes to Ukraine's membership of the EU, but also when it comes to getting its hand on these heavier weapons, Kyiv will keep up that push.
And thanks for that. Rosie Burchett reporting live to us there from Brussels.